Welcome back. Yesterday we talked briefly about the passing of comic writer, director, and actor Harold Ramis. Today, how about a few laughs? Harold Ramis was a comic and satirist who joined Chicago's Second City just because he thought he was funny. And he was. His first major breakthrough came as the screenwriter of the classic Animal House.
Toga, 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 toga,
In 1980, he moved behind the camera for his first smash hit, Caddyshack.
Greenskeeper now about to become the Masters champion.
It looks like I'm a wreck. It's in the hole!
In 1981, Ramis wrote for himself, creating Private Russell Ziske in the hit Stripes.
No, we're not homosexual, but we are willing to learn.
3 years later, he was back as Dr. Egon Spengler in Ghostbusters.
Well, let's say this Twinkie represents the normal amount of psychokinetic energy in the New York area. According to this morning's sample, it would be a Twinkie 35 feet long, weighing approximately 600 pounds.
That's a big Twinkie.
Ramis even managed to make the legendary Robert De Niro into a comic actor as he wrote and directed 1999's Analyze This.
You saw that there was something that I was trying to do, and you figured that out. That's why you are who you are. God bless you. You got a gift.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
I really don't.
Yes, you do.
And we didn't even get to Groundhog Day in that clip. Now, President Obama, in a statement about the passing of Ramis, wrote something that caught our eye. He wrote, quote, "When we watched his movies, we didn't just laugh until it hurt. We questioned authority. We identified with the outsider. We rooted for the underdog. And through it all, we never lost our faith in happy endings." And, Rich, it was the questioning authority, that coming from the President of the United States. We were talking a little bit about that this morning.
We were. And there's through all his movies, like he said, the President said, I think accurate, Ramis always had the underdog, whether it was going against Dean Wormer in, Animal House, or in Stripes against the military, these two misfits here, or whatever the case may be. There was a subversive element, and people said people laugh differently and for different things in movies that happen after. We all know some lines from it, but even a Caddyshack, there was, you had the goofball or the kid or the caddy going against Ted Knight's character with Judge Smales. I mean, you could do all these, but there was a common meme,
It was irreverent comedy, and it was genuine without being gross. I mean, there was some gross scenes, but it was not gratuitous. So, and they weren't terribly blue, and it was maybe for the time.
Baby Ruth bar in the pool?
Compared to some of the gratuitous, gross out stuff, now the Seth MacFarlane movies, it's a very different kind of humor.
So every one of those movies, including the Animal House, keeping in mind in '84 was only 7, so I don't have the deep analysis of what to say. It was a very good, because as a kid I was looking at it very differently than as an adult now.
But you could mess with it. The idea was, there was, with a wink and a nod, you mess with authority in these movies, and I get where the President was going there. And I know Andrew, huge fan of Groundhog Day. It was one of those movies you saw it a second time or a third time on cable, and it seemed to get funnier the more you watched it.
Or 20 or 30 times or 40. I mean, it repeats like Groundhog Day does, like the plot of the movie does.
And, guys, 50 years ago, think about that, 50 years ago, it was the day that the man who would later become Muhammad Ali became the heavyweight champ of the world. Ali, then Cassius Clay. He beat Sonny Liston when Liston refused to come out for the belt here to begin the 7th round. Now, Clay, he was 22, huge underdog, but he was faster, and he out-hit, out-boxed, and he literally scared the champ here in a Lewiston, Maine fight here that was really the birth in many ways of the modern athlete. And Dom, he talked trash. He mugged for the camera. When it was over, he said he was pretty and that he was the greatest. And you know what? The world couldn't figure it out, but they liked it. And think about today in many ways. You didn't have athletes talking about themselves in the third person back then. He did. He changed the world.
Richard, earlier for the last segment, you mentioned challenging authority. For many of us, Muhammad Ali was the person that taught us that you can challenge authority. In my community growing up, I remember we used to refer to Muhammad Ali as the Black Superman because, we didn't see characters on television fighting, and then in front of the camera, combing their afro, and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty. And so Muhammad Ali is just, he's up there. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Speaking of that moment right after the fight, we have a clip of the moments right after the fight and Ali and what he said. And Ralph, if we can roll that.
Yeah, and I'm Texan enlistment, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I had him going in 8th. I was getting ready to take him in the 8th, as you can see. But the man stopped it just to keep from making me look so great. I say, now, give us that poetry on number 7. He wanted to go to heaven, so I took him in 7. You took him in 7. I am the king of the world. Hold it. I'm pretty. Hold it. You're not that pretty. I'm a bad man. Wait. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
And he backed it up.
No, I actually get teary. I get choked up when I talk about him with my kids. He was, I think he was, Liston was favored 7-1.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was Miami Beach, and 50 years ago, just a few months after the Kennedy assassination, and Castro, Miami was this hotbed of political activity, and you had this going on, and then his conversion to Islam. He was beautiful. He really was just the best athlete. I think Sports Illustrated named him the athlete of the century.
He was a great athlete, and also an entertainer. He was certainly an entertainer, and that's what you see a lot of these days is, entertainers. So he had it all. He was a political leader in his own right, entertainer, and great athlete.
And especially in athletics, and especially with athletes these days, you see the sort of self-promoting, self-aggrandizing, who don't necessarily have anywhere close to what Ali had to bring it. But you didn't have a lot of athletes who would say anything remotely like that.
But he actually stood for something.
He did.
Right.
And you know what? Other these guys were preening and mugging for the cameras and then get the DVs or whatever it is.
The government authority was terrified of him in the way they were terrified decades earlier of Paul Robeson. They tried to make him disappear. What he did by refusing induction into the military during Vietnam
and he took his punishment for it.
was unprecedented. They were terrified.
How many athletes in the prime of their career will give up 3 years in the prime of their career, and that's what he did for his religious beliefs and didn't back down. But to an entire generation, to a nation, but particularly to the black community, he is the man.
Yeah.
And I'll just, the last thought that comes on when you see that Ali 50 years ago, you compare him to the Ali that we saw. I mean, by the time when I was a kid, when he fought Larry Holmes, when he was doing the decon ads, he was clearly slowed down, and then we saw him at the Olympics, and now obviously the health issues that he's going through now. I mean, still beloved, still the greatest, but it makes it that much harder to watch or to think about how he's changed over the years.
To a generation, Mike Tyson fights were appointment viewing and stuff, and they were, but there was a time where the heavyweight champ of the world was the baddest man on the planet, and everybody was tuning in for the fights.
The Will Smith movie covering Ali was excellent.
Yeah.
It really was excellent.
And now being the heavyweight champion isn't even the biggest title in boxing anymore. You can make a lot. Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, they make more money than heavyweights do.
We got a nice story coming up on the other side of this. A son set to receive the Medal of Honor for his late father, and a heartwarming bonus that in many ways took so much longer.